So, remember when you were a kid and all the grown-ups used to ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did you dream big? Did you want to be a president, an astronaut, a world explorer? You see, when we're a kid, our future always seems like it can be extraordinary. Maybe it's because you had a mom that always told you you could be anything that you wanted. Or maybe because you really wanted to be a president or an astronaut. And as we get older, we start to lose touch with that extraordinary possibility. That maybe we had an adult laugh at our dreams one too many times, or we figured out like being a president, people would tell you that you couldn't be, or they would just tell you that you could be an astronaut, it's going to be really hard. We start to define our possibilities based off of what everybody else thinks is possible. And we stopped thinking, maybe I can't be extraordinary. I can only be ordinary, limited to my ordinary lives. Or are we? I'm here today to challenge that idea and to introduce to you a new one. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Marilyn Rose Sandoval. And you're probably thinking, maybe I look like an unlikely hero. In fact, you're probably really thinking, what does this Caucasian-looking, hijabi-wearing, Mexican-sounding named woman really have to say that's going to resonate with my life? And so you see, what I want to talk to you today is that I didn't always look this way today. And when I introduce myself to strangers, I say I'm a Muslim entrepreneur. And while that definition is by no way near complete, those are what terms are used to define me and what I've become. And I didn't always look this way, and now I know that I've got your attention. You're looking really closely at my perfect nose thinking, did she get work done? Well, I didn't. My nose has always been this way, but I definitely didn't always wear a hijab. I definitely didn't always wear a suit, and I definitely didn't always speak on stage. I had to learn how to reinvent myself so that I can become the best version of myself so that I can be here with you today. And what I want to talk to you is that you are not limited by your circumstances. So what I figured out about me is that I am Mary, learning how to live my dream life and reinventing myself so I can have fun, freedom, and flow. Now, I am not you, and you are not me, so your ideal life is by no means going to be like mine. But what I want to share is that you have a you underneath your identity that can be just as fulfilling and just as meaningful as the me that I found for myself today. And I want to ask yourself, who are you and how do you define yourself? What we know about identity is that from ages 7 until 13, our identity starts to develop, get roots. And just as we grow older and develop roots, so does our identity, and our roots become intertwined. Sometimes our roots in our identity might get uprooted. Have you ever seen a tree that's been pulled out of the ground? It takes massive force, and the visual is not so pretty, because in order for that tree to grow again, it needs to find new roots, and that's not always an easy task. So have you ever been uprooted before in your life? And it can be anything. Maybe a cross-country move or a breakup with a high school sweetheart. Maybe you got laid off. Maybe you're going into graduation and you have no job lined up. Or maybe you're in retirement and you don't have a plan. It feels like you were just punched in the gut and if like your heart is coming out of your throat. It gets really tight to breathe. Now, we used to have a norm of what's called a midlife crisis. And now with social media and constant comparisonitis, we have a new norm, part 1, quarter life crisis. So let me take you back to my childhood. I grew up in Chicago with my jicama-eating Mexicanas, and these are my people. This is where I fit in. Until I was age 7 and I moved to Wisconsin, and my everyday fruit became exotic. And I got made fun of when I pronounced it mangos instead of mangoes. So I played with the white suburban kids. I did things like them. I went to school with them, but I never really fit in with them. But yet when I went back to go visit my Mexican family, I didn't feel like I fit in with them either. And when I figured out that I had to ask myself, who was I? Who was this person that I didn't see? Living outside of the crowd is not a fun place to be, so I learned how to adapt and I learned how to blend in. I took advanced placement classes. I was a cheerleader. And I even had a friend who used to tell me, Mare, we are so happy you're here. We always need a smart girl in our group. Well, I didn't know what girl was I behind what the world saw. For me, I knew that I was a hard worker, I was a dreamer, I was a lover, and I was always so passionate about what I believed in. So let me break this down to you real fast, real quick. There are 3 parts that make you, you. Your ego, your shadow, and your identity. Your ego is like the actor, but really it's like a protector. It's meant to protect your identity from what that you created for yourself. It's what keeps the bodybuilder pumping weights, and it's what keeps the introvert shy. The problem happens is when that ego starts to overprotect. It starts to act like a helicopter mom and make these decisions for you. And when this happens, it might keep you for when you want to ask that smart girl out, but your jock friends think she's so lame, so you end up not asking her out. Or when you really want to try something new outside of what you thought you were, but you don't want to end up looking like a dunce. So you decide to stay inside of your comfort zone and only do things that you know your identity will succeed at. Then we have your shadow. Your shadow is what's behind your identity and below your ego. It's wanting to be seen, but it dares venture out into the light. With your shadow, when light casts onto us, everybody casts a shadow. The problem is with your shadow is when it's not seen, it can create a smothering version for ourselves. So for your shadow, it's when you compare yourself to others, it creates these emotions of sadness, anger, jealousy, sometimes even connection. You might have that friend that you really bond over because you dislike somebody or something else. And finally, we have our identity. And our identity is based off of our beliefs, our religion, our family, our friends. And this is what keeps us, us. So I just want you to take a minute and ask yourself, where is your ego leading you? And what shadow is hiding behind you? Take a moment to reflect and think, is my identity really reflecting me, my deepest dreams, my biggest longings? So for me, my persona that I made when I was younger, it wasn't based off of me or my dreams. It was based off of blending in, the path of least resistance. And while it works, mostly, it doesn't really work because you never end up doing what your heart actually wants you to do. And so some of my clients will tell me, Marilyn, I want to become the next Oprah. And I have to tell them, honey, the world only needs one Oprah. The world is waiting to see the real you. So when I graduated school, I had another uprooting because when I had wanted to go into the medical profession based off of a very idealistic view of what the medical world really looked like, because let's face it, when you say you want to become a doctor, it just sounds really cool. Well, I was uprooted when a thoughtful mentor of mine decided to show me what the real medical practice looked like, and it was not what I was about. And so suddenly my ambitions just seemed meaningless, and I had no idea what I was going to do or how to even go about it. And sometimes uprooting can come from a place of pain and cause pain, but sometimes uprooting can give you a new version of you. It's like a window's been opened and your new potential has finally been unleashed. And maybe this has happened to you. You've been uprooted and you became a new version of yourself, a better version of yourself, so much so that when you ran into old friends, they go, wow, Johnny, you sure have changed. Almost as if change was a bad thing. But I'm here to tell you sometimes change can be the very best thing that happens for us. So when I graduated school with a biology degree, I now had to find where my analytical science background could be put to use. And for me, it was something very different, entrepreneurship. I traveled the world and I started a career, started my business, and I was able to learn the ropes after 4 years and having some really amazing mentors. And I figured out what I wanted to do career-wise. When I figured out something deeper, I figured out, Mary, that I was doing something very similar, because when I wanted to be a doctor, I had always wanted to help people. This just took a new form, a new place. Because oftentimes we think our identity has to be based around our career, but it's really based off of something different. You, the real you. So I'm so thankful for that uprooting in my life, because it gave me this chance to just dig up the person that I was really about. But what I want to tell you is that you don't need to be uprooted to have a change in your life. What if you learned how to replant yourself and learned that process along the way? Before I start to share how to do that, let me make one thing clear. It does not come through comparison. We are already set up with so much expectations of what the world is supposed to look like, what the CEO is supposed to be, what the doctor is supposed to be, that when we're constantly scrolling on social media thinking, oh, this is what I'm supposed to look like, who I'm friends with, that when there's a moment we don't exactly feel that we fit in, it can take us into a very dark place. What I want to share with you is that right now we are living in a scary time because suicide rates are higher than ever. And it happens because change needs to come into, sometimes pain has to come into a place. In order for change to happen, pain has to be higher than your resistance to change. And sometimes that pain can be too much. So for me, my community was uprooted when that high school, happy, amazing, athletic kid decided to take his life on New Year's. And you had to ask yourself, was he really happy? Was he going through so much change that the pain was too much? And unfortunately, this is not an uncommon story across our nation, because this is when you compare yourself so much, your shadow can start to overcome you. And so what I want to share with you is the secret. Instead of going through uprooting, you can go straight to the dream, and it starts with learning how to replant yourself along the way. And this means to create a vision much bigger than your resistance to change. So what I want you to do is go ahead and get out that vision board and think, who am I? What do I look like? Who is the real me? What are my deepest dreams? And what is my biggest longings? For me, life wasn't so easy. It was a little bit complicated because when I became Muslim, my Muslim friends started trying, and I told them my name was Marilyn. They started calling me Maryam. And while blending in sounded so easy, I had to think, okay, nope, let's bring out this blank canvas again and decide who I'm going to be. So there's a good and a bad to a blank canvas. The good is that you have a blank canvas to be a new you. The bad is you have a blank canvas staring deep into your soul, and you have no idea what to do with it. And while I really want to share with you is that the blank canvas is sometimes the very best place to start, because it gives you an opportunity of space to just look at where the direction you want to go and how you can start to mastering the shifts ahead. And when you do this, I want you to think of 3 things. First, you need to, of course, learn how to master the shifts. Instead of being uprooted, start to think to yourself, okay, how can I replant myself along the way? And as my mentor, Anthony Truck, says, let's make shift happen. So instead of the uprooting, you learn to replant yourself. And next, you have to create an environment that nurtures change, that nurtures you, and that nurtures your true self by connecting your heart and your mind. And then next, I want you to remember this framework. It's real simple, real easy, 3 words: fun, freedom, and flow. So think of fun, that instead of making decisions based off of black and white of what you think it's supposed to be, think of living life with all of the vibrant colors and make decisions based off of what makes you feel alive. Think freedom. This freedom to truly connect with yourself, that you can truly connect with your heart instead of scrolling through social media, waiting to see what double hearts you got. You're actually having this freedom to truly connect with you and who you are. And finally, think flow. And ask yourself, am I forcefully going through the motions of life? Or am I allowing energy to flow through me, the energy of life to flow? And what I want you to do now is to just dream again. Take a moment and to daydream and think, am I showing up as the best version of myself? What would my relationships look like if I actually took a little time to think of my consciousness? What if I end up asking this girl out despite my friends and she ends up being the one? So just dream again and go ahead and visualize what it is that you want. Turn it into goals and make sure that you have it into a plan so it can be your reality. Because when you find something that excites you, go out and reach it, because it's just waiting for you to be you. And again, finally, right now, what I want you to do in this moment is to take the time to decide. Decide to use this chance as your first version of replanting. And ask yourself this: am I committed to forcefully going through my life, going through the motions? Or am I committed to becoming an extraordinary new version of me through reinvention?